Chapter 1 of the horror story concludes for the first hostages released today. Just before 6 p.m, the convoy came out through the Rafah crossing from Gaza into Egypt. Inside, 24 hostages, 13 Israelis, 10 people from Thailand and 1 Filipino. They are now all in Israel and are reported to be in a decent condition. Today was about timings, counting down to temporary truce, rescue and release. 7 a.m, Khan Yunis, Gaza, the ceasefire started. This was filmed for us in the morning. A tantalizing taste of normality as people took to the streets in their droves. You could forget for a moment that anything was amiss until people walked past the ruins or picked up the leaflets dropped by the IDF earlier. The text, "The war isn't finished yet, the humanitarian pause is for a short time." One of the other conditions of the agreement kicked in around the same time. Aid trucks started trundling into Gaza. Some of the 1.7 million people displaced inside couldn't wait for the water to arrive. Meanwhile, back in Israel, the final touches to the enormous care package for hostages, many of them children. Some of them will be looked after here in a special 30-bed unit. Outside, a security briefing by the helipad where they'll arrive. At around the same time as Israeli hostages were being released, Palestinian prisoners and detainees were being freed into the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The mother of one prisoner watching it all unfold on television, hoping her 24-year-old daughter would be on one of the buses. She's been in prison for the past 8 years, sentenced by an Israeli court for what they've judged was her part in a stabbing.
I'm happy. These tears are tears of joy. Do you know what it means? That Mara has not been with us for 8 years. I've been trying to cry for a month now, and the tears wouldn't come. It just happened now.
The Israelis have already been given the names of the hostages on the release list for tomorrow. And so the clock starts ticking again. For families whose loved ones didn't get out today. And for people on both sides pressing pause on the fighting, but ultimately still at war.
And Porrick joins us now from Tel Aviv. And Porrick, we've been seeing pictures from Batunia in the West Bank, where people have gathered in the streets waiting to reunite with family members released as part of this deal with Israel. What more can you tell us?
That's right, Krish. Expect lots more pictures like that as the evening goes on. The Palestinian detainees were dropped off at 2 points in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. On the Israeli side, given the number of hostages that were released, it's easy to forget what individuals on those buses had gone through. So let me just give you one example. Doron Katz is a mother of a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. They were all kidnapped together. They were visiting the Nir Oz kibbutz. They were visiting their grandmother. She was killed there. The extended family only found out about their capture when they appeared in a Hamas video. So just imagine the relief that family must be feeling tonight. You may also be wondering why so many Thai hostages were released this evening. That is because Thailand did a separate direct deal with the Iranians. One of the reasons why that happened tonight, that was part of a separate deal. There are lots of Thai agricultural workers in Israel. It has been, I must say, a remarkable day here in Israel. And I guess the hope now is that today forms a template for the days to come.
And what is known about the Palestinians that Israel has released? And, you know, were they convicted of crimes? Were they held in administrative detention? What sorts of things were they being held for, given there's so many teenagers?
Yeah, so the majority of the Palestinian detainees and prisoners were women and teenagers. I went through the list of reasons why they were in detention or in prison. The vast majority of them were in administrative detention. So we're talking about things like teenagers picked up from throwing stones, etc. There are some more serious crimes in there as well, but that's why we're very deliberately describing them as prisoners and detainees.
Porrick, thank you for now. Well, earlier I spoke to James Elder, spokesperson for UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Charity, who arrived in Gaza ahead of the 4-day truce. And I asked him about the condition of the children there.
Deplorable, heartbreaking. I don't think in a small space of time I've seen so many children with wounds of war. And then, of course, in grossly overcrowded spaces of places that were places of education and now are camps, and of children looking for somewhere warm to. It's getting cold at night, and then mostly just a severe lack of water, So many children with diarrhea, so many parents at the hospital anxiously looking over to see if they're getting better. So it's, Christian, it's like fear and sorrow have taken root in this place.
What will you be able to achieve in 4 days, if that's how long this ceasefire is?
A lot. It'll start with water. It'll be medicines. It'll be hygiene kits. It's terrible talking to adolescent girls who wait for hours and hours to use a shower or a toilet. It'll be blankets. It'll be tents. As I say, it's cold. But let's be clear, Christian, this has to go on beyond 4 days. This pause has to be a ceasefire, and then it has to go into a lasting peace. That's the only thing that's going to keep children safe, be it from waterborne diseases or be it from bombardment.
I mean, according to the agreement, that is in the hands of Hamas as to whether they continue the release of the hostages in order to maintain the ceasefire. In order to operate there, are you having to effectively work under the auspices of Hamas? What sort of interactions do you have with them?
UNICEF everywhere, you work with it, whichever party can give you access to ensure that you're doing the job you need to do. We control our own supplies here, so we have warehouses, we bring in supplies, we have warehouses, and then do our distributions.
Now, the other sort of children's question I wanted to ask you is about the children who are being released by Israel as prisoners, because many of them are 18 or under, we understand. I mean, what has UNICEF's role been in that, and what is your view of their detention?
We have said from the start, whether it's those children who are hostages here, they need to be released. I can't imagine the torment that their families are enduring whilst they wait. And there are children, as you rightly say, Christian, who have been in Israeli detention for a long time. Those children also need to be back with their families, not just the children being released today, but a far, far greater number. And UNICEF has been advocating for that for a long, long time.
Do you know how many children hostages are being held and what their conditions are by Hamas? Are you able to, do they communicate with you in any way about the condition of those hostages?
No, best of my understanding is that it's more than 30 is the number, but that's a number that's come from the Israeli Defense Forces. But again, from the very first day, from those atrocious attacks on the 7th of October, we have called day in, day out for their release to try and both keep those children safe and ease the torment of those families. It is a good start today, but it has to be all those children.
And just finally, I mean, your sort of sister organization, UNRWA, is also very controversial with Israel. Like, Israel sort of regards them as biased against Israel and in favor of the Palestinians. What can you say about the impartiality of UN organizations like UNICEF?
Well, I could say two things. One is that's our bread and butter. We exist on the front lines because we are neutral and we're impartial. We're impartial and we are neutral. For an organization like UNICEF, we are there for all children. This is a highly political, polarized environment, and all we do time and again is remind the world that you're only going to get peace through a negotiated settlement, and that's going to be something that has to prioritize the rights and well-being of Palestinian and Israeli children. In terms of UNRWA, I can only speak to the colleagues I've met on the ground, and I don't think I've encountered people who are braver, who have been more literally at the front lines. I have a great deal of faith in everyone's impartiality in the most trying and, to be quite honest, dangerous of circumstances.
James Elder, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Christian.